and welcome to Connected episode 211. It is brought to you this week by Smile and Pingdom. I'm your host, Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts. I have Federico Vitici with me. How are you?
Ciao, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. And we have, of course, Michael Hurley.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh my God, are you Michael, the Michael Hurley?
No.
The podcaster and friend of...
No, I'm a different one.
Oh, okay. Okay, never mind that. Who's this
I'm
guy?
standing in for the Michael Hurley
okay,
today.
Okay, that sucks. Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Did you do something to the real Michael Hurley? Or he's just off today?
You don't want to know.
Legally, I can't say.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, we're going to talk all about Mojave today because Mojave's out. I know the two of you are very excited to go with me down this road.
Hang on a second. I feel like we spoke about it last time, and I feel like that was enough.
Actually, all I have is some follow-up for Mojave because
Okay, cool.
you don't let me put it in the show. We want
You
to...
can put whatever you want in the show, but then you get upset when you're talking for 10 minutes. But I can't do nothing about that. I had nothing to say.
It was
you know?
it was a pretty easy segment to edit. I think I tweeted a screenshot of my Logic project of it's just me talking.
I asked you some questions, but that's all I got for you.
Yeah, Federico got up and made a snack. Anyways, we want to point people to John's review over on Mac Stories. As normal, he did a great job. Does a really good walkthrough of what the OS has to offer and the pros and cons of its changes. Jason Snell also had one over on 6 Colors that I really found his take on the new apps. So what are they? News and stocks and home and voice memos. I think Jason's...
The Marzipan apps.
The Marzipan apps. They're really bad. And hopefully they get better or the Mac is in trouble. But go read.
I already have a problem with this, so okay we're going to talk about it because
Yes.
I've heard you say this a couple of
topic
times,
now.
and I'm seeing this on Twitter a bunch as well, right? Like that people are saying, "Oh, these apps are bad, so Marzipan's a disaster, and it's going to be terrible for the future of the Macintosh." Let's just give it a couple of years first, right?
I like
before
that
we all go jump off a cliff about it.
I like that you say Macintosh. That makes me feel nice inside.
Well, this is what the replacement Mike Hurley, he's more old school like
Yeah.
that. The real Mike Hurley would say Mac.
Yeah.
Well, you can't say Macs anymore because nobody knows what it is. It's Macintoshes now
Apple's,
because of the phone.
Yeah, Apple's really, their naming is really
Macintoshes.
complicated. I think what I mean by that, I can't speak for other people, but I think Jason and I agree on this because we've talked a lot about it, is that if this is the future of Mac software, which I think it is, right? Because you are giving access to a whole bunch of apps pretty easily. People who would never write Mac apps now can, and it seems like the method to do it probably won't be that bad. Then, if these become the overwhelmingly popular way to build Mac apps, and they're bad, that will do damage to the platform. What I'm worried about is that, as it is on iOS, as well as the Mac now, Apple sort of sets the tone for what a third-party developer, the bare minimum they should do in an app. It's changed over time, but I'm sure you guys remember the beginning days of the iOS App Store. Most apps even looked like default apps. That was very much a thing of slipstream your way into what Apple's doing. That's changed over time, but I think the quality that Apple sets forth as this is the standard, that needs to be high. And the Marzipan apps at this point now, it is a beta. It's not even really beta. It's like a sneak peek. That quality is pretty low. And I think what Jason and I want is for them to increase that quality. But if Marzipan rolls out and the very best Marzipan apps are as bad as the Home and News app are now, then that's not good for the Mac. And even if they improve it over time, I think first impressions are important because there are going to be a lot of apps that the developer just does the bare minimum, which makes sense from a business perspective for a lot of developers, I'm sure. But the minimum should be higher than it is now. So that's what I mean. Saying it's the end of the Mac is hyperbole, and it's fun to be dramatic. But I do think it's a problem. But I think Apple knows it's a problem. We're turning follow-up into a topic, I'm sorry. But here's my fundamental thing with this is if Apple didn't care about the Mac, they wouldn't have done this. This seems like a lot of work. And Mojave is all about the Mac being more Mac-like. So like the Mac isn't going anywhere. It's evolving, but it's not going anywhere. And so Apple needs to, like, they've done, 70 or 75% of the work. They need to go the extra way to make them feel like good apps on the Mac and what that means. And they haven't done that, but I trust that they will because they've done so much work already. I don't think they're going to leave it so close to the finish line. That's all.
Yeah, I think that, like, there is a little bit, I understand the concern, right? And like, to build on a couple of points that you made, I don't think this is the future of Mac apps. I think it's the future of all apps. I think that this is what Apple will at least position as the future of all apps. The idea that they will be built this way to run everywhere ultimately, like, is kind of the goal that they're going to want to push for eventually. I think that Apple have made a mistake in not even attempting to brand these applications as beta versions when they very clearly are. It seems very peculiar to me that they didn't call like News and Home and stuff like beta publicly. Nerds know that this is based upon unreleased kind of technology that they're building these on. We know that. But they didn't do that widely, which it seems peculiar to me when they very simply could have. And I believe that a lot of the things that do frustrate people, which is like very iOS-y controls, that will go away. They'll find a way to fix a lot of that stuff. Because,
I hope so.
I think the fact that they've got them to where they are now, like, they seem okay. They do the job. They just do the job weirdly, and I would like to believe, for the same reason you just brought up there, that they will make changes to them, because otherwise, why on earth did they bother to do them in the first place? Like, if it was all about iOSing the Mac, they could do that really differently to this. Like, I think a lot of people see it and like, oh, they're just ruining it and trying to, turn the Mac into a big iOS computer. They could just make big iOS computers. They're not. They're trying to find a way to, like, modernize Mac apps, and part of the modernization of it is trying to make them like iOS apps, because that's where apps are being made. So, like, they're trying to, like, bridge that gap, which I totally understand. It's a new way to bring software to the platform, making it easier for developers to make them cross-platform. But, like, if all they wanted to do was just turn the Mac into iOS, they could just make a big iOS device and then just, like, that's it. Like, I think this shows an innate love and care of the Mac, in that they're trying to find ways to boost the platform. I think we just got to wait for the implementation details to shake out over the next couple of years, which is what they've put into place. So I wouldn't go like lighting your hair on fire over these applications being not what you want them to be right now. I think that there's a process in going along here.
So this is basically the same point that we'll make on the next episode of App Stories, which we recorded a few days ago, and it's actually all about the sneak peek or Marzipan apps. My point is there's a line to draw here in the Apple community, so to speak, as to whether you believe that there's going to be a single shared app platform in the future, or if you think Apple should keep making two distinct platforms. Not in terms of operating systems, but in terms of how developers create apps. If you think that iOS apps should be wholly separate from Mac apps, or if you think that in the future developers should just write one app and have it run and have it adapt to different devices and different screens and different interactions. I think that 5-10 years from now, maybe less even, I don't know, there will be a single platform for making apps for Apple devices. And the same app will run on the phone, on the iPad, on the Mac. It'll adjust to the screen that it runs on. It'll adjust to the cursor or to multi-touch or to whatever you want to use, maybe even AR, I don't know. But I think Apple wants to remove the friction that developers have found so far in making the single app available everywhere. And the facts just speak for themselves. If you look at the App Store for iOS, and if you look at the App Store for the Mac, especially for consumer stuff, I'm not talking about like pro apps that are, it's easier to find pro apps on the Mac because that's what the Mac is for. But if you look at consumer apps, if you look at something like Slack, maybe not even Slack, if you look at utilities or like sports apps or news apps, whatever you want to use, like whatever it is that most people use on the iOS App Store, it's not available on the Mac. And it's usually a web app or an Electron app that I think arguably Apple doesn't like as a solution. So what's best? Not to offer consumer apps on the Mac at all, just out of principle, because the Mac needs to be a separate thing? Or is it better to have this kind of solution where even right now, yes, the Home app is kind of terrible. And yes, News is basically the iPad version. But, at least right now I can change my lights from my MacBook. And I think that's better than nothing. That's better than not having HomeKit at all. And we could keep basically banging the same drum that, oh no, Apple should make an actual native HomeKit app for the Mac. But, they haven't made it. Maybe because they don't have the time. Maybe because they don't have the team. I don't know. But the truth is now we have some kind of home version on the Mac. And to assume that this is going to be this way forever with the weird iOS controls and, the lack of Windows and the lack of keyboard shortcuts, I think that's a little short-sighted. And I think it will change. I agree with Mike, this should have been labeled as a beta version because that's what it is. But also I don't think this is a nightmare for Mac users. I think it's actually, for most people, including me, this is much better than not having these iOS apps as it used to be before. That's my point.
No, it's a good one. I think.
I don't know if people would have assumed that this was the way this conversation was going to go.
No. We're still in follow-up, actually.
Just like me and Federico trying to calm everyone down.
I just think it's so interesting because the Mac hasn't had a big transition like this in a long time.
Yeah.
And these reviews don't talk about it much, but next year, what we're going to be talking about is the end of 32-bit and Carbon apps. So our friend James has taken DragThing down from sale because it's written in Carbon, and the future of that app is unknown. And there's going to be a lot of utilities and stuff that sort of fade away after this release. So, but we can park that till next year. Like we talked about, I did not write a review, but I did have some thoughts beyond what we've talked about here. So that's in the show notes, a link to that, as well as the Mojave screenshots. They've all been added to the screenshot library, both light and dark mode, as well as a gallery showing every combination of light and dark mode and all the accent colors. The dark mode and the yellow accents, I think, is my least favorite. It looks pretty bad, but if you want it and it looks good to you, then more power to you, I guess.
So you should remember that this wonderful, the world's greatest podcast was featured in the WWDC keynote. We were on stage.
Oh, wait, you mean ATP?
No, they were in the podcast session. We got the keynote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay,
so
cool.
we're in the keynote. Our wonderful artwork was featured very prominently. It turns out there's a little bit more love to go there. This was sent in by a bunch of people. The official Apple Support Twitter page tweeted a little video about how to listen to podcasts on your Apple Watch, and if you look real closely, you'll see that there is an episode of this very show featured in the little carousel that goes on there, and it was like episode 206 or 208 or something. So a pretty recent one. So.
And you know why they skipped Connected as they were scrolling on the Apple Watch? Because Apple Support knows that listening to Connected is best. I mean, you can do it on the Apple Watch, but it's best experience, on a comfortable couch in your living room.
You gotta relax.
You gotta relax. You gotta take it all in and just enjoy the conversation. And Apple Support knows because they listen to Connected. That's why. So it's pretty awesome.
Thank you to whoever it was out there who did that. You cannot understand the joy that we all feel from seeing things like that. It makes us very, very happy and very, very proud. So thank you.
I do want to talk about the ideal listening conditions for listening to the show, though.
Yep.
Okay.
So I like the idea of being on a couch. Maybe the lights are kind of dim and you've had a drink. It's very relaxing. But I think if you really want to get into this, the only way to do it really is to be just in the bathtub, just fully relaxed.
I thought you were going to say completely nude, and you kind of did say that.
I was trying to say it without saying it, but you just went right to it.
I thought Steven was a never nude, like Tobias from...
Wow.
I don't know. I just.
You can still get in the bathtub in jean shorts. It's no problem.
I mean, denim gets snug when it gets wet, but it's fine.
That's what you're supposed to do, right? Like with real good jeans, you're supposed to get in the bathtub with them so they're shape to you.
I'm not cool enough to know about that. And I have a phone that's too big for those jeans. So,
well, that's how you get it to fit the phone perfectly. You just put the phone in your pocket, you get in the bathtub, and then you can shrink it around just to keep the pocket.
Man, you gotta just keep it in the pocket.
You'll be totally fine. How many minutes do you get with IP68?
2 hours. That's a long.
Oh,
that's
perfect.
long.
That's enough to shrink some jeans.
Well, and it's long enough. That's our podcast isn't ever longer than 2 hours, so that's why now you know.
So let's get started.
Why we try to limit. I try to limit it. Oh. We have some news about AirPower. No, we don't have any news about AirPower, but Belkin has shipped something that looks kind of similar. Federico, what is this thing that Belkin is doing?
It's like so
ugly.
It's an ugly block of
White plastic.
I mean, it's a block of white plastic with two separate stands for the Apple Watch and
it also comes in glossy black plastic as well as
nice.
glossy white plastic.
Nice.
So that's good news.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically like this block with two stands, a small stand for the Apple Watch and another stand for the iPhone. Can be an iPhone 8 or 10 or 10s. And you just charge them separately, but on the same little thing. I don't even know how to call it. It's not a dock. It's a block of plastic.
Yeah, I have a question about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't work out how the iPhone stands securely.
So I was just looking at this. The surface of the block looks like it's like grippy rubber.
Yeah, I think it's rubber.
So I think it's just like friction. And I imagine if you have a case, it's even grippier. You know, like a case would kind
That is
of
not enough.
hold on to it. It also has, and one thing I like about this, I agree with you, it is pretty ugly. But it has a USB port on the back. So you plug this thing into the wall, you can wirelessly charge your phone and your watch, and you have a USB port out the back for something like in this picture they show an iPad. So it's versatile that way too. So you just have one plug taken up by three devices, which I don't know about y'all, but Mary and I each have a nightstand, and we both each charge our phones and our Apple Watches at night on our nightstands. It's like I'm out of plugs behind our bed. Like I have like a power strip back there. It's like not great. So this, if you have that problem, could be a solution to eliminate some of that. But I wish it was prettier. I don't know why it's so boxy. Like, you know, if you leaned over and hit the corner of your head on that thing, it'd be really sharp.
Very specific injury.
It's like this is the thing. It is a good product, I think, but I think that it is not greatly designed.
Yeah.
No, it's a functional product.
I'm looking at their website.
Okay.
There's kind of like a little raised area.
Yeah.
To like hold the phone. That just does not feel secure enough to me. Like if you bump that, like you know how Federico, what did you break that way? Like one of your dogs bumped into the was it a phone?
My phone, yeah, the 10 last year. Yeah.
Yeah, like this would 100%. Like unless it's like super grippy, the plastic, like like a super grippy rubber on it or whatever, which it doesn't necessarily look like there is. It might. It's hard to tell, but I would be hesitant to leave my phone on that thing.
Yeah.
I like it to be fixed in place a little bit more.
Well,
but the idea of the product is good, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I also especially like the inclusion of the USB port on the back. I think that's really clever. Like, I like that they did that, so you could charge an iPad or just anything else.
Yeah. I wanted to get one immediately, but sadly, it's coming out in December, which means there's a. I mean, don't want to be that guy, but there's a real risk of air power coming up before this.
No, there's not.
The risk of air power. That's what it is now. It is a risk.
It is a risk because it's gonna catch fire, and you know it.
There is a risk of air power.
I have a lot of comments
like
about
that.
this press release that they linked to. One, they use a Dropbox link for their images, like just questionable. But they also, some of the bullet points don't mention the new phones. It's compatible with the 8, 8 Plus, and 10. So come on, PR people, get on it. It's also $160, which I don't know how I feel about that. That's expensive, I think.
It's a lot of money.
It
I mean,
is.
how much is AirPower going to be
Well,
if it ever ships?
$649.
Can you imagine
AirPower,
if it was like more than 200?
it costs a lot because it comes bundled with insurance for your house.
And the fire extinguisher.
They just ship like a box of devices to you. Like, here's just like another 3 phones in case it breaks.
I imagine
Oh,
AirPower will
AirPower.
be one. So I would say $149, which means it'll be $199 because the Snell rule is to add $50 to everything, which is a really, really good rule. So I would say $199 from Apple.
That makes sense.
Yeah, if it's more than 200, like that would be
It's
very
that's
upsetting. I
bananas.
think.
And you got to buy an AirPod
If it
case,
ever arrives.
right? Like
If it ever arrives, yeah.
I don't know.
But jury's still out. I know that there's like, it's in 12.1. I don't think that means anything really. Like, I understand that they're continuing to like do stuff as if it's going to come, but like we're a year away at this point. Like I'm sure they've been working on it for the last year as well, but
it is strange that they printed it on the in the manual of the iPhone XS though. Like
It's
we have very different opinions upon this, but sure.
You think that was just like some random person at Apple who just slipped like the manual of the new iPhone? Like
no, I just think the inclusion of it in the packaging doesn't say anything about the fact of whether it ships or not. Like, because it's not available. This product doesn't exist, but it's in the packaging, right? Like, that is a blunder because that packaging can be changed at any point. They didn't change it, right? So, like, it shipped. This product doesn't exist, and it's in there. AirPower is not a thing that you can charge it onto. So, like, that is an error. They should not have shipped these phones with it saying you can use an AirPower mat because you can't.
How
that is
can
not
you
a
make
thing
that
you can
error?
do.
How is that possible that it's just some error? Like
No. I mean, I don't mean like it accidentally slipped in. I mean, Apple should not have sent these phones out with it saying you can use an AirPower
so
thing. Like, that
why
is
did
a
they
problem.
do it?
Because I believe this was designed when AirPower was shipping. And it just got put in the box and nobody noticed. That's what I think. And the idea of like Apple wouldn't let that, of course Apple would let that happen. There's so many moving parts. Of course it can happen.
No, I
like
don't
the fact
think
that
that.
AirPower doesn't exist. What happened? Things
If you
can go
know,
wrong.
If you know that it's late, but if you're pretty sure at this point that it's coming out by the end of the year,
I think you would have then said it on stage. If you were pretty sure it's coming out by the end of the year. And I just don't buy that like it being on the piece of paper means anything. What it does mean is that they shouldn't have shipped it with the little piece of paper in it that said you can use AirPower because the Apple Watch doesn't have it on there. The Apple Watch one says just use it on the included charger.
I think a test will
Doesn't
be,
say anything about
does the
AirPower.
10R paperwork come with it in a couple weeks? Or do, future 10S and 10S Max boxes omit it, right? Like, is this just like a run of them that happen to go out at
Well, the real
launch
test is,
and they're being
do
edited?
we get to 2019 with no AirPower or not? I understand the point of like it seems like it would be crazy to include it if it wasn't existing.
it does seem.
But just having worked in a place where like there's a lot of moving parts and paper stuff is being made, like that decision for that manual may have been made like 4 months ago. And it just got printed and it got stacked in a warehouse. And then someone was like, you know what? We think we're going to ship this at some point. Let's just put it in there.
Or
Like these, we can fantasize about Apple being perfect, but they're not perfect. Like these things can happen. That's my feeling on it anyway. I'm more than happy to be wrong. And I just don't think the inclusion of the word AirPower in the paperwork means that AirPower is a week away.
can you imagine like it's launch day and like Phil Schiller, he's had his phone for a while, but he buys one for his spouse or one of his kids, and it's at night, he's at home on the kitchen table, he's unboxing it, the paperwork spills out, he sees the word AirPower, he like flips over the table, right, like runs into his office and gets the bat phone to call Tim.
It's like, we agreed that no one would mention this word.
So we're going to get into our impressions of iPhones and the Apple Watch and watchOS 5. There's a lot to talk about, but first I want to give everyone one last reminder that September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So for the month of September, we talk about this. A lot of our friends talk about this, which is really great. Raising money for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which is here in my hometown of Memphis, and they treat kids with cancer and other catastrophic diseases free of charge. And my son is one of those kids. He was diagnosed with a brain tumor when he was 6 months old. Now he's almost 10 and he's doing great. And that is thanks to the hard work of St. Jude. And like I said, I've never been charged a dime for what has to be millions of dollars of chemotherapy and surgery and MRIs and all this stuff. So there's a link in the show notes. This chapter has a link in it. I'd love if you would go check this page out. I'd love if you would donate. My goal was $20,000 as of right now. We're a little over $42,000. I would secretly love to hit 50 because that's what we did last year. I think that'd be really awesome because it's such important work and work that's, I think, obviously close to my heart and close to the heart of a lot of other people. So thank you.
All right, today's show is brought to you by our friends at Smile, and today I want to talk about Text Expander, which is a wonderful product that they make. Text Expander will help you communicate smarter. You can create snippets for things that you type or copy and paste all the time. You can create snippets for short things, such as email addresses and website addresses, or even today's date formatted in a way that you may not be used to. So I have the US date formatted nicely as a little snippet, so I can just get that written out nicely. So, and even if, like, again, sometimes when you work from home especially, you kind of just lose track of the days and the months. So sometimes it could be nice to have a snippet that can just type it out for you automatically. You could maybe even make snippets for the longer things that you type out, such as frequently used directions, or you could maybe like proposals. Probably not marriage proposals, more like sponsorship proposals, proposals to companies for different things that you may want to engage in business for, or even answers to common questions. You can have your entire website FAQs into separate snippets that you can fire off into emails which people send. And you can also check out the Text Expander blog for more snippet ideas. They're always adding new things in there to try and spark some ideas. Snippets can be summoned in any app on the Mac, Windows, iPhone, or iPad. You just use a short abbreviation or search using a hotkey as you type. You can even personalize your responses using fill-in fields and then share your snippets with the whole team to power everyone's productivity. As somebody who uses a PC every now and then, I have my gaming PC and I do a bunch of stuff on it. I'm so happy that Text Expander is on Windows, so I don't even have to think about it. I can still use all of my snippets no matter where I am. I absolutely love that. You can head to textexpander.com/podcast right now and you can get yourself 20% off your first year. That is textexpander.com/podcast for 20% off your first year. Our thanks to Text Expander for their support of Connected and all of Relay FM.
So the new iPhones are here. We are all back in the Max Club, which is like the Plus Club, but reborn from the ashes of the Plus phone. Mm-hmm. And I think, I think we're all happy with it. So I'm curious, have you adjusted to the size? What are the benefits of the size? Does it feel different than the Plus phone? Mike, how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm happy. I'm very happy. I'm, as people where I grew up would say, Stephen, I'm happy as Larry. I don't know what that means. But
who's Larry?
They used to say. I don't know, but he's a happy guy, I guess.
Like Larry Page?
Yes, I'm happy as Larry Page using an iPhone. So very happy. I'm as happy as Larry Page when he did that like parachute jump wearing Google Glass. I'm that happy, He was very happy that day, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love it, man. Spoiling something, but like me and Federico both independently used the phrase, I feel like I'm home again, which was kind of funny. Like I wrote it down in my little notes and then Federico sent it to us in a text message. I was like, oh, I know what you mean. It's great. It's great for all of the reasons. Plus phones were great. The Max phone is great too. Like the screens are bigger, which is just nicer. Like if you're watching things, it's just nicer. But you also get more information on the screen. So I did some comparisons, right? And these aren't shocking. They're not like massive numbers, but it is more data, which I like. So in Overcast, you see one more podcast in a playlist. In Twitterific, I see 2 extra tweets than on my 10. In Spark, in my email inbox, I see 1 extra email in the list. In Slack, there are multiple lines of messages. Like, I like big phones because I like to get the most information from my pocket computer. Like, these aren't monumentally huge numbers, but it's more, and I always want more. So I love it. I love the Max. It's great. It's a wonderful phone. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's been especially nice to, keeping the same font size, but getting more content in return by switching to the big screen. I especially like that when I'm catching up on Twitter or going through my RSS, as Mike mentioned. I think there's a real feeling of not being constrained by the limits of the screen anymore, which I really like. And also, it just feels more comfortable for me, like to hold and to scroll. I got the typical reaction that 2 hours after using the Max, I picked up the 10 again, which, by the way, Silvia is now using, and she seems to be happy with it. And it felt just small. And I wonder, like, how did I ever use this phone? I want to use the Max forever. I had to adjust a little to the keyboard, just because even though I didn't like it, I sort of begrudgingly got used to the smaller keyboard of the iPhone 10. So the first couple of hours of typing on the Max, it felt strange, and I was having a lot of typos in my messages. But the next day everything was fine, and now the keyboard is excellent. And I tried to type on the smaller 10, and I couldn't. So I guess that the transition is complete. Yeah, it feels.
Do you mean
really
the baby
good.
phone?
The baby
So
phone.
that's how it feels to me. Like I
Yeah.
picked up the 10 and was like, what is this tiny? How did I?
Mm-hmm.
How have I used this for the last year? It's wild.
Imagine using an SC today.
I can't
there's how is that even
And it's like-
possible?
It's not that I think the 10 is small. It's just the way they feel. When you've used one of the bigger phones, you pick up the smaller phone, and it's like, I don't even understand anymore. It's so funny how quickly you adjust. And it's the same as I remember saying this all those years ago, right, to you guys about the Plus phone. You adjust really quickly.
Yeah.
It just becomes what you're used to, and it really doesn't take very long. And there are disadvantages, right? It is heavier and it is bigger, right? But I don't think it's unwieldy.
No.
I'm using my pop socket more though, because it is harder to get my hand around the phone, right? Because the phone is wider. So it's way easier to just stop halfway because the pop socket's there, and I just grip that.
Interesting. The thing I've noticed is that there's two things I don't like. I think the Apple silicon case is still a little too thick for my taste.
Yeah,
I would like a silicon case, but thinner. I don't know if it exists. Like a peel type of case, but made of silicon. I don't know if that's possible at all from a physics perspective.
Someone makes it. There are so many cases. Somebody makes a thinner silicon case.
And also what I noticed is that I don't mind the weight. I think it's. I mean, of course, it's heavier than before, but it's not a huge problem for me.
It's like I just note that it is heavier, that it's too heavy.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, but what is an actual problem for me is reaching control center. I've been saying this ever since last year. I think it's in the wrong spot. I think Steven agrees with me. Personally, I believe it should be next to the multitasking UI. Basically where it used to be on the iPad. I think it should be in the same position on the iPhone. I think it's impossible to reach on the Macs. And I also think if Apple cannot make up its mind, it should become a user setting or an accessibility setting or something. Just let me choose where to access Control Center. Because right there in that corner, I found myself using reachability multiple times to bring down the UI and swipe on a non-existent corner to access Control Center, which is dumb. So, yeah, that's the only problem.
It's a bad spot. What I found myself doing is doing stuff in settings instead of Control Center because it's easier to manage, which is feels like a step backwards because Control Center is really good and it's customizable and stuff, but it is really far away. It's like, you got to send some sort of courier to go get Control Center for you and bring it back to you so you can use it.
So here's the thing. I totally know that Control Center is more awkward. I am not feeling it. I haven't felt myself be like, oh man, Control Center, and I don't know why. Whether I'm just automatically just treating this phone as a two-handed phone or I'm able to reach it easily. I don't really know why. It's as soon as I saw the phone, I was like, oh man, that's gonna be difficult, right? I'm hearing you guys say it right now. I'm like, yeah, you're making perfect sense, but I have no personal feeling of it being annoying for me, and I don't know why that is. But I do agree with you both that it should change. But I just wanted to say, just as a kind of a different part, right? As a different opinion, I'm not feeling the issue, even though I know the issue would naturally exist. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that I'm noticing very much.
Interesting.
I don't know why.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe it's the pop socket. Maybe that makes you. I don't know.
It could be I might just be naturally gripping it even when it's closed in because it is just a gripping point or a balance point so that I can kind of more easily shimmy my phone. I don't know. I mean, I really do recommend that people try these things. I think that they're very good and they really help.
Federico, let's both try it. Let's order them and try it. I think
I want to tell you both in advance that you're going to really not like the fact that it is super sketchy as to whether wireless charging works.
Yeah.
You're both not going to like that. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
I feel like we should try it, though. I feel like the time has
But
come.
I think you should try it. They're on Amazon, and they're not very expensive. I recommend you give it a go.
I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea at all. I don't want to stick something to my phone. No.
We can stick it to the case.
I already don't like the fact that the case is too thick. Why would
Just
I
try
make it
it.
even thicker? Nah.
Because it doesn't make it thicker. Just try it. Just give it a go. Come on, this is an experiment.
This is
an experiment.
peer pressure. I don't like it.
I'm not saying you're going to like it, but I think you should give it a go.
Look, there's one with a giraffe blowing a bubble of bubble gum. That's the one you should buy.
Come on. Who doesn't want that? I bet you could get one with an Italian flag, too, if you wanted. There's lots of different
For the Relay logo.
Yeah, make sure it's an official pop socket though. You want the real deal. You can get them on Amazon, but just give it a go.
I'll see. Okay. I'll see what I can do.
He's not going to do it.
He's not.
I'll try.
I agree with all y'all. Like, it didn't take long to get adjusted to the size again. It is definitely noticeably larger than the 10 and a little bit heavier, but it feels the way the Plus did in that it effectively feels borderless, like, and not because of the design. I felt this way with the Plus phone too, like, because it's so big, it's like I'm just looking at a movie. I'm not looking at a YouTube app on a phone. Like, there's something that makes content in particular more more sort of all encompassing on a larger screen. So like, I feel that way with the Max, that whatever I'm doing feels like just more real and more vibrant because it's larger. That's something I really liked about the Plus phone, especially watching video. But even doing things like reading or doing email or Slack or whatever, like, just because you can see more of what's going on, it feels like you're doing it on a computer more than you're doing it on something you stick in your pocket. Like, it feels like a pocket computer the way the Plus did, not just a phone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I noticed the other day, I found myself actually using landscape mode while I was reading like a story in Safari, and I was just lying in bed and reading, and I removed the case because when I'm in bed and I'm using the iPhone, I just I like the fact that it's still like there's no risk of dropping the phone because I'm in bed, and also I prefer the way that it grips. So I actually use landscape mode, and then I realized, it actually feels like using I think my thought was like, it feels like a PSP. It feels like a video game console. Because of the way that I was holding it. And I realized, this is it's like a giant screen. And it was like, until a few years ago, it was unthinkable to have like a 6.5-inch iPhone. And now look at how I'm using this phone just to randomly read an article in Safari. Like how normal it felt. That sort of surprised me.
Was been very. Oh, you know what? Actually, you said about landscape just reminded me. Have you guys seen what Landscape Control Center looks like?
Is it possible to use landscape?
It is friggin' wild. If you use an app with landscape mode,
okay,
right, and pull down from the top right, it is crazy looking. It's just a big long list of boxes. Is very peculiar. I recommend giving it a go because it just looks very strange. It is very strange looking.
List. Wow.
It's just a big. It just looks like a weird chocolate bar. Like you can get chocolate bars broken down into the little squares. Mm-hmm. It just looks like a really weird chocolate bar.
Yeah, I think you're right. It looks very weird.
I'll put something in the show notes for people that aren't as cool to be in the Max Club because they chose a smaller phone, and so that they can still benefit from this thing. Because I guess this isn't on the other phones because the other phones don't have the landscape mode. If you guys had any kind of thoughts or feelings about the stereo speed, like widening stuff? I was listening to some music from my phone couple of days ago, and I really liked it a lot. Like, it felt more like listening on my phone was a nice feeling, as opposed to like listening to music on my phone was a good feeling, as opposed to like a means to an end. as it would usually be, you know?
Yeah, I noticed this while I was listening to, I think, one of my Apple Music playlists. I didn't really pay attention. I just thought to myself, it sounds nicer. And then I think the same day you sent us a message about stereo mode, and I was like, I connected the dots. I was like, oh yeah, it's totally right. That's why it sounds better. I don't usually listen to music on my phone. But when it's functional and when it's the only speaker, or when it's like, I don't know, I just want to listen to a song that somebody sent me, I think it does sound nicer. I think it's pretty nice. And I notice also that it sounds better when like watching videos or having phone calls on speaker, stuff like that. It sounds better, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. What about Face ID? Have you seen any differences there? I mean, I'll honestly say I haven't. If it's any better, I'm not particularly noticing it.
I don't think I am either. It did feel like running the iOS 12 beta made FaceTime more forgiving. Like if you're laying down or, your face is partially obscured or something. And I still feel that. I don't know if it's any faster. If it is, it's pretty minor, I think. I really feel like going from iOS 11 to 12 was a bigger change in the way Face ID worked for me, especially in situations where like you're laying down or something like that.
And shouldn't it, like, in theory anyway, take a while if there are any benefits, because it has to relearn my face?
Well, I think the only benefit, the only way Face ID would be faster is because the chipset is faster, and I don't know if that requires updating the learning model or it just can run the model faster than it used to. I don't know if we know enough about how it works to answer that honestly.
Okay, because I just figured that it surely has to learn my face again, and I just wondered if that I would maybe see the speed improvements later on, but I just don't really think that it's why Apple didn't call it Face ID version 2. It might be a little bit faster, but it's not going to be that much faster, really.
I think I noticed the slight speed improvement because I feel like it takes a fraction of a second less to unlock my phone than before. But also, I was running into this problem with Face ID on the iPhone 10. Where because I got a haircut and I suppose I reached this threshold that my beard was much shorter than before. Face ID got sort of tripped up somehow, and I was having more failed scans over the past couple of months with the iPhone 10. But then when I set up the Face ID from scratch on the 10s, it felt. I mean, of course, it learned with my new appearance, and it was fine. But then I compared the two. I set up from scratch Face ID on the 10 and on the 10s again because I was like, "Am I going crazy? This is actually faster." And from the same orientation with the same sort of gesture that I do of picking up the phone, looking at it, and swiping up. The 10s was like a tiny fraction of a second faster than the iPhone 10. And then I also compared the apps like 1Password with the extension, for example, when it comes up in Safari. It seems faster than the iPhone 10. And of course, I don't have any actual scientific measurements to prove this. But just by looking at it, it seems a little snappier than the iPhone 10. So also, I haven't played with in iOS 12. There's a new feature to set up an alternate appearance for Face ID. Mm-hmm. I haven't played with it, but I actually considered, if I get a haircut and maybe I look more different than Face ID expects, maybe I should consider this option in the future. So I can have a face with beard and face with no beard, sort of as an option in Face ID.
The two extremes of Federico.
Mm-hmm. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't had any problems with that in growing my hair out, but I haven't gotten it cut in a long time.
Right, but growing it out shouldn't be a problem, right?
It's slower, I guess, right? Because it's always learning differences. So that is interesting. I don't think I've heard that from other people, but you're probably what it is.
Maybe just nobody's got a haircut except for Federico since he got his new phone.
Probably what it is that the neural network is just overwhelmed by your Italian handsomeness. that you just crash the entire
I
system.
knew you were going there.
It's a flaw.
Man,
It's
that's probably true.
yeah, you know, like those Intel things that were going around last year and early this year. You know, like
Heartbleed,
yeah,
and
meltdown
stuff.
and all that stuff. That's what it is. Let's talk about the camera a little bit. You know, it's been so interesting in the last week that the way Apple talked about the camera in the keynote was really downplayed, and like I think we all walked away thinking this isn't a huge update, and then come to find out the sensor is much larger and it's doing a pretty impressive job with HDR, I think. But like it feels like the camera is a bigger deal than Apple let on. I find that really interesting. For me at least, the rear camera, I want to talk about the selfie camera separately. The rear camera, the HDR stuff is really good. Like you can really pull off some shots where the sky would have been blown out in the past, or the face of the person you're shooting would have been, sort of dark or muted because they're in the shadow. But I kind of feel like this is as good as I want HDR to be. Like some of these photos like border on too unrealistic in a way, like over processed in a way that I didn't expect from an iPhone. And I don't know if that's just HDR, if it's software stuff they're doing, but it feels like, at least in some of the more extreme examples I've seen people sharing in reviews, that some of these pictures aren't what I expect from an iPhone. And I think a little, if whatever this is, if it's dialed up anymore, I think that'd be out of bounds in what I prefer out of a photograph. Is that something that you guys resonate with, or am I just being sensitive?
No, I think I'm firmly in the camp of who they are making this for. Like, photo looks appealing, not accurate. And you're in the photo looks accurate world. And I think that ultimately for Apple to continue to make cameras that are considered to be competitive against their biggest competitors, they need to lean into what they have, which is let's make these photos a little bit more pleasing and not actually how a camera should be taking them, right? Which is the idea of like me taking a picture of Steven with the sun right behind him. Well, like that, Steven would never take that picture, right? Because he understands how cameras work. I would, because I don't. And so, like, what picture is best to give me at that point? Should I get the picture where it doesn't work because the sun is right there? Or should I get the process picture where it does work and I get what I was clearly intending to do, which was a nice picture of my friend? Right. And I think that Apple, personally, I think that they are making the right decision, because I think a lot of people, they say X camera is better because X camera either has like brighter colors, more pleasing colors, right? So the picture looks nicer than the actual, maybe even the world does. And or like they are doing little tricks to make the photos come out better, even when technically they shouldn't. And I think that it's the right move to make, because otherwise their competitors are going to keep making more and more pleasing photos via the use of computational photography, as Apple called out on stage, right? Like that term of using software to make photos look better. They're going to keep extending that stuff. And if Apple keeps trying to go for the true to life stuff that they've done in the past, people are just going to, I think people will be ultimately unhappy with the photos that their phones are producing, because they think that they're not good enough, but that's not what it is. They're just trying to stay true. But they have to let go at some point, because there's only so much you can do there's only so much I know they took a big jump into the actual hardware technology this time as well with the new sensor stuff, but there is only so much that a camera in the size of these phones can do right now, and you have to make up the rest with software. And I think I will say I am extremely happy with this, because I've been taking a bunch of pictures when also comparing them to like we were walking around in London late last night, and I was taking pictures of some landmarks and stuff, and just there were just details in her images that like didn't exist compared to mine, right? There were things that in low light that my phone could very easily pick up that on her phone it just looked like nothing was there. And I know what I prefer, as a person taking photos on my phone. I know what I prefer. And what I prefer is to have the most detail, like to have the most forgiving camera possible, because I'm no photographer.
Yeah, personally, I still haven't noticed. Like, I don't have a picture that I took in the past few days, and I'm like, yes, this is like, I can totally see smart HDR at work here. just because I haven't taken any meaningful pictures, I think. But on principle, I agree with Mike on the idea of, I don't know, like all these concepts. Like when I see people saying, oh my God, you can take amazing pictures with manual camera apps and raw photography on iOS. I'm like, yes, I appreciate that exists, that is possible. But man, give me those sliders and those settings and those words on screen. I don't know what they mean. And I tried to read tutorials and I tried to learn. It's not a skill that I'm able to absorb and learn and practice over time. So the more that a camera system can do this stuff automatically for me and make it look nicer, even if it's not accurate, like in photographically speaking, I don't need to win any contests. I don't need to be like called by National Geographic to shoot pictures of dogs. I just want pretty pictures on my phone. And for that purpose, I think the more complexity you remove and the more features you add that make them look prettier, I'm happy. I still don't have a picture that I can say, oh, this picture wouldn't have been as nice on the iPhone 10. But I know that it will come the moment when I will be looking at a photo and go like, yeah, that this camera is actually very nice. So for now, I can only say that I agree with Mike conceptually, but I'm sure he's also right from a practical standpoint.
I feel like this over processing is really noticeable on the front camera, maybe even more so than the rear. It's doing a lot of smoothing. I've never looked so good in
no blemishes on that front-facing camera. And again, it's like, I'm not 100% sure what's going on here, right? Because that one feels like surprising that they kind of leaned into it. It's like a lot of pictures and like not amazing lighting. Your face is very soft, right? Like it's very soft looking. And I guess it's like if they are doing that, like it kind of makes sense, right? Like if people are taking selfies, they add all these filters. Maybe the camera can do some of it for you? I don't know, but like I just feel like it seems like they may have made some decisions and about the way this phone processes images, and by and large, I think I agree with all of them. But I understand that some kind of more traditional photographer people wouldn't. I get that.
And I do have options, right? Like if this bothered me enough, I could go shoot in RAW and a bunch of third-party apps and bypass some of this or be able to tone it down.
And you can turn off Smart HDR too, right?
Yeah.
You can turn off.
And I noticed by restoring from a backup that if you had HDR disabled before, Smart HDR will be disabled as well. If you set it up from scratch, which I did after because I had a bunch of problems with my backup, it'll be enabled by default in the camera settings.
So there you go. I think we all have a thumbs up on the new phones.
Oh yeah.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Officially blessed by the Connected Podcast.
Which is, I know what everyone was looking for.
Yeah, that's what Apple is really waiting for. The phone will be successful now.
They're really hoping. Apple's favorite podcast endorses the new iPhone. Today's show is brought to you by Pingdom, the company who make website performance monitoring super easy. Everybody loves a fast website, and Pingdom are helping to keep your favorite sites online. Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, Slack, Relay FM. These are just a few companies who trust Pingdom to take care of their website monitoring. Websites are super complicated, and they get more complicated all the time, but you can monitor any site transaction with Pingdom. Stuff like user registrations and logins, checkouts, and so much more. So you can make sure with Pingdom that your users are having the smoothest site experience possible, because if disaster strikes, you want to be the first to know so you can get in there and take care of it. It's super easy to get started with Pingdom. All they need is your URL and they'll take care of the rest. That's it. Go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now, and you can get yourself a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. When you sign up, use the code CONNECTED at checkout to get a huge 30% off your first invoice. Thanks to Pingdom for their support of this show and Relay FM.
Along with our new larger phones, there are new larger Apple Watches. So Mike, where we left this, you didn't buy one because you've moved on from the Apple Watch, as they say. Federico, you did, and we're going to talk about the cellular option for you because it's new for you. Where we left me was I was not going to buy a watch at this time. I was going to wait, and as the title of last week's episode shows, sometimes I have trouble sticking to decisions when it comes to technology, and I picked up over the weekend a 44 millimeter
I love that this happens so much.
Space gray, aluminum GPS.
You couldn't even last the weekend. If they came out on Friday and you had it on like Saturday.
Yeah, it's not my finest hour.
It was effectively as soon as you could have gotten
Stephen
it.
Hackett, a man of short-lived decisions.
Yes.
Wow.
Which is not how I am with other things in my life. Not all things, but technology is a weakness. What I find most interesting about this watch, and we're going to talk about the software, but from the hardware perspective, is that how much thinner it looks on your wrist. It is actually, I actually looked it up and I did the math. It is actually thicker still than the original Apple Watch. But because it is taller, it genuinely looks much thinner.
That is so interesting. That is, I have not heard anybody mention that before, right? Because we forget they kept making it thicker.
Yes.
So even though they made it thinner, it's still thicker than the original one. That's crazy.
It's interesting because Apple used to list things in inches. It was like point whatever, and now they do it in millimeters. So like you got to do the math and like catch Apple.
It should be. It's the one true unit. Just saying.
I agree with you. I'm not in disagreement. The metric is better.
Okay.
Metric is better.
I don't think anyone's fighting you.
Yeah.
He's just like super ready to have a fight that no one wanted.
I'm turning into the European version of Casey Liss every time there's any kind of conflict between America and Europe. I'm hashtag European. That's who I am. Mm-hmm.
I think it also looks thinner for a couple other reasons. The speaker grill being sort of long and narrow now, like it's like a slot like running down the side of the watch, I think helps visually break it up. And if you look on the other side, the digital crown on the original watches, I don't know if it was smaller. I actually have a Series 0, but I didn't measure it. But the crown either looks bigger or is bigger now, but it's also more centered on the case. The original Apple Watch, the crown was sort of proud of the surface a little bit. And so they've done some trickery over the years to make this thing look thinner. And at least on the wrist, to my eye, it looks way thinner, even though on paper it's really not, really not. But it's a good trick. It's a trick that Apple pulled off. Remember like the iPhone 5, right? Like when you picked up the iPhone 5 for the first time, it felt fake because it was so much like lighter and thinner than the 4 and 4S, even though it was a bigger phone. Like Apple has used this trick before to its advantage. I think the other things that really make the case different to me is the back being all ceramic now, and the light diode is different. Like the back looks really, really nice on this phone. It's a fingerprint magnet, but it looks really nice. And what I actually like the most, honestly, I didn't expect this, is that the side button, the lowercase the side button, is flush with the case now. It doesn't stick out from the side, and it means when you're looking down at the watch face, you can't see the button poking out, and it makes it look a lot cleaner. You know, there was a rumor that was going to become a touch sensitive or like force sensitive button. I can totally see Apple wanting to do that at some point, but I think it being flush is a big improvement when it comes to like the clean lines of the watch. So it really feels like they've really done the work to continue to like polish and to refine this design over the generations.
Yeah, I agree. And also using the crown. Like I was just trying to spin the crown on Sylvia's Series 2 Apple Watch last night, and it felt like the thing was not moving. Like I needed to apply some serious pressure and force to spin that crown compared to how smooth and fluid and just, I don't know, fast is not the right word. It just feels like there's less friction in the crown of the Series 4, even though it's not like you're going to spin the crown accidentally. It's a different type of, I don't know, it's a different type of feedback, which also brings me to the fact that I want to ask you, Stephen, what you think of the haptic feedback on the new watch, because I saw a bunch of people on Twitter either saying I really like this, and I'm on that sort of in that camp, and people saying I prefer the old way because this new one with the taps for every step of the scroll, it feels kind of weird. So I wanted to know what you think about it.
I really like the haptics tied to the digital crown. Like when you spin through like a list of apps or a list of messages or something, it feels really premium, and it makes it feel like a physical thing much more than the digital crown ever has in the past. The rest of my answers are colored by the fact that I've worn a stainless steel for the last year, where the haptics are noticeably less effective, I think, because the watch is heavier and you don't feel them as clearly. So on an aluminum watch, it's a whole new world as far as how they feel. But I still have the prominent haptics turned on, but I like the way they feel. The haptic motor feels refined in a way I didn't expect. And it, the word I keep coming back to with this hardware is that it all feels pretty tight. Like it just feels like everything is really well considered and a lot less sloppy than it was, especially like on the original watch. So it feels good. I like them. I like that they're using them more. I think it's a nice feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It does feel more contextual to sort of to the action of scrolling, like especially lists of items. Like I was using the reminders app on the watch the other day, which is actually pretty decent. I'm using the reminders while I'm grocery shopping now, and just it's nice to have that list of, we have a shared list with Sylvia, and it's nice to have that list on the watch and to check things off as you go. And scrolling the list, where it's almost like you can feel each item passing through the crown. And there's this idea of like this connection between items and like software and like an element on the left side and the crown on the right side, and it kind of feels like you're physically scrolling through this option, like with as it were like a physical dial. I don't know. It's very nice. It's a very nice and different type of interaction that it's something that you don't get on the iPhone, for example. This type of like physical input methods that the crown is, and I feel like this version of the digital crown, it feels more true to what Apple said 3 years ago with the introduction of the Apple Watch, that it's this new input method and it's tied to the software. I feel like this crown represents that vision, not the original one.
I wanted to ask you both if you're using any of the new watch faces and what you think of the design of them.
Yeah, I use them all.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, so the daily one that I use, like as a default one, is the infograph, and I totally changed
the one with the analog
yes,
clock.
I totally changed my mind on the look of the white face. I thought that in pictures it looked not ugly, but very sort of I need your attention type of watch face.
It stands out. It really stands out. Like, but I'll say, like in the time that I've played around with one, I was wearing a Diana's watch for like a day. That was my favorite. Like, I liked the white circle, like the white main part of the face with all of the bright colors and that kind of stuff. Like, I thought that looked really cool. I liked the way that it looked.
I like it because I customized it to my needs. So because I'm not a watch person, in addition to the what's it called, the hands of the oh god, all these terms of the watch face, I'm not able to read them quickly all the time. So I also have a digital time in the middle of the face, and also I put complications for stuff that I use all the time. So there's like a tiny complication for getting in touch with Sylvia, a complication for...
I like that one, the favorites one.
Favorites.
That's a really sweet addition. Like, I think that's very nice. So, but then, because also, you can have your like loved ones' faces, like the tiny little faces.
Exactly.
Like, it's nice. It's just a nice thing.
It's nice. I put in the time for New York, so that gives me like a baseline of the time zone in America, and my calendar and current weather and activity. But also, I use the infograph modular face as my activity/workout face. So that one I customize with the activity graph in the middle and buttons to launch workout music and heart rate. Which that's cool. So I use it as the workout face, and I find myself switching between infograph modular and the Siri face when I'm not using infograph. These days, the Siri face I only use for one specific feature, which is after a workout, it gives you automatically like this special card for heart rate recovery, which is like how many beats per minute you lost after the workout. So that's something that the Siri face does automatically no other watch face can do this. This information is not available in the workout app either. So sometimes I switch to the Siri face after a workout just to check out that tiny card. Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that it did that. That must be pretty new. Have either of you tried the Siri face with third-party stuff?
Yeah, but only, I think, at least for me, only Carrot Weather works.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Stephen, what watch faces are you using?
I've been trying the Infograph, which is the one that leaked the big analog watch face. I am using, I think, more the Infograph modular, which is and they kept the old modular watch face. All the old watch faces are there. They're sort of like scaled up, and a lot of them they sort of screwed up the complications and made them curvy when I don't think they should have. But the Infograph modular gives you a couple different options. The regular modular blah blah blah. It's all staying in. The modular watch face didn't have before, so I like that one. My frustration is, and I'm spoiling a column I wrote for Club Mac Stories a little bit, but like I still find it really frustrating that like I understand third-party developers have to work to support this stuff, and that's fine, and the ones who do it will do a good job, and that's great. But Apple itself has really like mismatched support for their own first-party complications with the various faces, and so one that I like. Actually, several times a week, I want to see the sunrise-sunset complication, and that just straight up is not available on the Infograph modular face. Even though it's on the old modular face and it's on the new Infograph face, it's not there. And it's and where it is on the Infograph face is really limited. And like, I just wish Apple would spend more time making their own stuff available everywhere. And like, it just feels what it feels like. It feels incomplete. It just feels like, oh, you got to one but not the other, and like that's ridiculous. That's all the first party stuff should be available everywhere. I understand that some of them may not look great on some faces, but like let the user decide. And that particular example, maybe there's a third party app that probably is that does sunrise sunset complication. If you know of it, please let me know on Twitter because I'd like to check it out. But I still find that frustrating, especially with the new faces with so many slots. It becomes much more apparent to me that Apple's own support for them is really scattershot, and I find that frustrating. But I don't love the design of the Infograph, the classic one. I think it's really busy. I really don't like Apple's new like super colorful look. Like I wish that I could set that thing to be, toned down a little bit. Like you could on the old modular face, you could say, I want all the colors. I want everything to be the same color, like a monotone look. Mm-hmm. Again, just giving us more options to manage this the way that we want, I think would be nice. So,
I want to share a piece of feedback that has come from my wife, and I want to see if you guys agree with this or not. She keeps saying this to me, and she's kind of driving me crazy with it now because she keeps saying it as if I can do something about it. But she keeps saying to me, this feels like an old person's watch because the text's so big everywhere. She's complaining about how big the text is in the UI.
Lucky you, Adina, because I often wish that that the text was bigger. I mean,
so that's strike one, I guess.
No.
Stephen, do you feel this way in any way?
I feel it on especially the new modular face.
Right, see, she uses the modular face, so that might be what she's mostly struggling with.
It's the size, but I also don't like this new San Francisco, like, bold rounded they're using, because it feels a little chunky in a way, or like maybe even a little childish.
So this might be what she's seeing. Because I didn't know there was a new font, but like she's like, she doesn't like the watch face, and she feels like the text that comes up in notifications is too bold, it's too big. And she keeps calling it the old person's watch.
And she's on the smaller of the two. So we're both on 44, and she's on the 42. Yeah. Or the 40, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. One thing that I did when I got my first Apple Watch, and I've left it the same, is I have the reduced transparency setting on, because I think that makes the entire Watch OS experience much more legible. And I definitely recommend that to anyone who has trouble with the reading on it, because like, especially with a colorful watch face, it's just like a rainbow mess behind your notifications. But while we're talking about this, I think the text is one thing, and I see where she's coming from. But I do really like, especially like in screens like Control Center, that everything is just a lot easier to tap on because everything's bigger.
Yes, she likes the bigger buttons.
Yeah.
She likes the bigger buttons. She feels like
She likes big buttons, and she cannot lie.
she cannot lie, even if I try and deny it.
The big buttons are good, especially with something like, I'm sure you're all the same. Like a lot of times, if I'm just missing something on my watch, like I'm walking, or like it's always required a amount of like specific like input that now you can feel like you're a little bit messier with because the buttons are bigger. I think that's all that's really nice. It's not like on iOS when they went larger, and I still feel like iOS doesn't really work well on big phones everywhere. But like watchOS, everything just got a little bit bigger, and that's good because the screen really is nice. Like if you have one of these new ones, you should definitely go play with like the Fire or the Molten Steel or Bubbles, whatever those new watch faces, because it really shows like how far to the edges it goes. And it really feels like a new sort of thing with that large display.
Yeah. I love Mike that you and Adina are a couple with good eyesight, both of you, because I know that you keep the smallest text size on your big phone.
Well, but I do wear glasses.
Well, they're good
I have
glasses
corrected
though.
eyesight.
Maybe my glasses are kind of crappy. I don't know. I have, if you guys allow me, I have 2 quick comments about workouts and having a cellular watch.
Yes, please.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you about the cellular. So yes, please.
Okay,
tell
so
us.
for workouts, after a summer break in the month of August, where I didn't really work out as much as I wanted to because I needed to finish the review, I've started my workout routine again, and I'm sort of catching up.
That's good news.
Yeah, catching up with my old sort of rhythm. And I noticed 2 things. First, of course, the Apple Watch Series 4, the heart rate sensor, still not as precise as external monitors. So like the chest strap that I'm wearing, the Polar H10. If only because, that sensor can poll for data every second, and the sensor on the watch polls for data every 2 to 3 seconds, I think.
Did we ever tell the story of you losing that at WWDC?
No, you stole my sensor.
Federico lost his health sensor in our hotel room somewhere in WWDC, and then spent the rest of the week like just trying to find it everywhere. And like we searched that room like top to bottom. I have no idea what he did to that thing. I think he just threw it straight in the trash or something, and it got taken out.
What the truth of the matter is, either there's 2 possible outcomes. Either Mike stole it from me and sold it on eBay, or a house cleaning person right now is wearing my Polar H10 strap and exercising.
Nobody.
I think so.
Nobody, absolutely nobody in the world wants to own your sweaty
Well, that's your
workout
opinion.
sensor.
As I was saying, if you if you compare the heart rate graph for data from the built-in sensor and data from the external one, it's like the external one is a smooth curve with all data points filled in, and the Apple Watch Series 4, while better than before, still has gaps between every data point.
Okay. So it's better, but it's
better.
still not at the accuracy level that you want from a heart
And
rate
it's
sensor.
not the accuracy, it's the frequency of the measurements. The accuracy, I think it's better, at least for me, because the watch sits better on my wrist. So it doesn't poll for data as frequently as an external sensor does, but when it captures data, I think it's more accurate than before, because physically speaking, the new design makes it sit better on my wrist. So
yeah, and they may have also improved the sensor. Right. Yeah.
Finally, I switched carriers to get cellular support on the watch. So goodbye, Tim. Hello,
see you,
dear
Tim.
Tim. Goodbye. Hello, Vodafone. I'm now a Vodafone customer. I set up cellular today. I was actually concerned at first because it was not working. I kept getting an error, and then I Googled this error, and there were a bunch of people claiming that they're going to sue Vodafone Italy because cellular was not working for their plan, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. After 10 minutes of errors, it just worked. I think it was like a temporary problem on the webpage.
Just getting set up, right? Like
set it up on the watch. It just got added to my data plan. First 3 months are free. Then it's €5 per month, and you get 5 gigabytes of data. I went.
You
Yeah.
could never use that on a watch. What would you have to do?
Yeah, I want to just. This is the thing. Anyone that's owned a cellular watch will probably tell you that you will never use it, but it's nice to have.
But what's nice is that I think those 5 gigabytes also count for my phone. So I can actually.
yeah.
Well, it's kind of
Damn,
ridiculous
you're
because my
Right.
my new plan consists of 50 gigabytes per
Go.
month at 20 euros, which is ridiculous. Anyway,
I guess what people do use it for would be to stream stuff,
Yeah.
right? But I feel like as well these days, like a lot of apps are like like Overcast and music apps. They're caching on the watch anyway. Like, so you're probably not streaming that much. But like, I guess if you were like out running, like I can understand that. But that really does feel like the only use case for extensive cellular usage on the watch is like that you leave the house and go running and listen to music or streaming over cellular.
Yeah.
Like like even stuff like you're mentioning, like about having like you said this was about like, oh, it would be nice to not have to take your phone out when you walk the dogs, but you're probably not really doing anything. It's just so people can contact you if necessary. Like it's, you know what I mean? You're not like surfing the web or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know what you do on your watch.
I went to the park with the dogs and Sylvia today with just my watch. I texted you guys. I called my mom.
Oh, that was why
Yeah,
we got that
I-
message. Can you see this message?
I
I'm at the park.
I got a bunch of emails as while I was at the park.
Great.
It felt
This sounds
it
wonderful.
felt nice and futuristic. At first, it was kind of weird that I didn't have the phone with me. I think it's going to be nice for those times where like I just need to walk the dogs on the just for 5 minutes. Or just I want to go to the park and not have my phone or be distracted. I think it doesn't really work for all those times when either I want to listen to music in my car because the watch cannot connect to the car Bluetooth, so I need my phone. Also, it doesn't work for times when like either with my dogs or in social situations with my friends I want to take pictures because of course the watch doesn't have a camera. So I think it will be nice for those few times when either I forget my phone, which is not a common thing that I do, or maybe I just
Yeah, no, that
I
never
just want to
happens.
leave my phone behind because it's like I'm going to be out for 10 minutes. Maybe I don't know. I don't have pockets. I have a pair of shorts, Nike shorts without pockets for some reason, and I really like them, but they don't have pockets. So when they're very nice shorts, but they're very comfy, but they don't have pockets. So it's going to be nice, but I don't think I will use it all the time. I just like knowing that there's a backup. So the freedom of knowing that in case my phone dies or is not with me, I have a backup. And in case I decide to leave it behind, I can still be reached over the phone or via iMessage. So it's nice to have this option.
Can I make a super quick statement?
Super quick statement. Okay.
about the Apple
Yes.
Watch. I've just ultimately decided I don't want to wear one. Like I wore one for a day and have actually just come to realize something that wasn't true when I stopped wearing an Apple Watch, but is true now. I don't want the distraction of an Apple Watch in my life. Like I just found that wearing it for a day and getting notifications when I was busy, it just didn't work for me anymore. And I kind of don't want, and I just currently in my life don't want something strapped to my wrist, which is buzzing me. I've never found it annoying, but wearing it for that one day, I did find it really annoying. And I've gotten used to not wearing one, and I'm very happy. Like I have no problems not wearing one, right? Like I still get all the information I need within a timely fashion, and I'm not getting everything always constantly, like as soon as something happens, I'm not knowing about it because most of the time that's just not really a thing that I need. If I was ever going to wear an Apple Watch again, I would significantly reduce the amount of notifications that I did get. I kind of just had it set up pretty much exactly as it was before, and it was just like the email notifications and text message notifications was mostly just too much for me, really. And also, I really dislike how long it takes to show me the time. the fact that I have to raise my wrist in a certain way and then have to wait those milliseconds to get the time frustrates me. I don't like that I can't just see the time by just glancing down at my wrist. Like all these basic things as to why like people prefer mechanical watches to Apple Watches. Like I'm kind of in that camp now. I do not begrudge anybody who wears one. I think that there are like all of the great reasons that you guys have spoken about, like that Apple Watches are great. I think this is the first truly good looking Apple Watch. Like that it's not just like I'm picking an Apple Watch that I think looks the best. I think that the gold one, the gold steel one especially, is like that thing is beautiful. Like I just want to own that as like I own this watch for the reasons I buy my other watches. I think it's just a good looking watch, but it's just not for me right now. And I understand why anybody would want to wear one. But I just don't. I just don't. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I want to talk a little bit about the LTE because I had the LTE on the Series 3 and the Series 4. I opted for GPS. They had both in stock when I picked it up, so it was not an availability thing. But I in thinking through it, I just realized, just for me, I'm not discounting Federico what you want to do, but for me at least, I used it only a handful of times. I thought that I would leave my phone behind a lot when I went for bike rides or whatever. And it ended up, a couple of things happened. One, I just wasn't in a situation where I could leave my phone somewhere. Like, I'd drive to go ride somewhere and I'm not going to leave my phone in the glove box of the car or something. So I took it with me, and then I've got my phone with me. But really what it came down to is like, if I'm keeping the watch to stay in contact, right? So if somebody needs me, that falls into like family and work. If my wife needs to get a hold of me via iMessage or phone call, that's great, and I can respond on the phone over LTE, and it's totally fine. But if I was carrying it for, hey, I'm gonna cut out of work a couple hours early and go on a bike ride, and I need to still be around, right? Like something happens, then I need my phone to deal with that. And the real reason is that Slack on watchOS is a joke, like. And that's really where LTE on the watch fell down for me, because so much of what I would need to do under the category of, hey, I'm not really at work, but I need to be available, that a lot of that falls into Slack for me, just the way that we work. And that wasn't really a viable thing on the watch. So I went GPS only this year. We'll see if I regret that and go back to LTE in the future. But I just ended up not leaving the phone behind very often, and the times that I did, it would have been totally fine to take it with me. It wasn't because I didn't have a pocket or anything to take with me. So I hope it works well for you. It just, for me, for whatever reason, it didn't really stick, and so I didn't feel like I needed to spend the extra money this time.
All right, should we wrap up?
Yes. If you want to find show notes this week, head over to relay.fm/connected/211. You can get in touch with us there. You can send us an email, or you can find us on Twitter. The show is there. And, of course, we're there, too. You can find Federico at Viticci, Viticci, and he is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. You can find Mike as IMYKE, and he hosts a lot of shows at relay.fm. You can find me as ISMH, and I write 512pixels.net. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Smile and Pingdom. And until our next episode, guys, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Cheerio.
Adios.